Quadrilaterals. If you think that I have your paper in error and you actually did show that work, sure, after this, come talk to me before and we'll take a look at it. But you probably should be very, very sure. Quadrilaterals. Somebody work with me. Shoot, what is a quadrilateral?
Four-sided shape.
Yep. So we're talking about classifying them, and they are four-sided shapes. And we shall write these down, and you will be happy that you know these. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. The first one you don't hear very often. It's called the trapezium. Anybody know what a trapezium is? Trapezium is a quadrilateral. These are all four-sided shapes that has no, I repeat, no equal sides. None of the sides are equal. You know, it just looks like something goofy. I don't know. You put this in here, you put this like this, you'll put something like that. It's pretty easy to tell no sides are equal there. In that case, it's a. I guess I probably shouldn't have drawn it too much to look like it. Let me try that again. The only issue I have with that is it looks too much like a trapezoid. Which brings us to our next one. No equal sides is a trapezium. This one here, a trapezoid. Anybody know what the trapezoid is? It's a four-sided shape that has exactly one set of parallel sides. So if you're drawing a trapezoid, you probably should just start with two parallel lines and connect the other sides like this. This is parallel to that. That doesn't look very good, does it? I'm going to try it again. I'll probably do stuff in erasable ink. There we go, that's a little better. Two sides of parallel sides. Just one better. Good? And then that gets us to a parallelogram. I like the telegram, only not. Parallelogram, which is a four-sided shape with two sets of parallel sides. And one way to make that would be to do this. You could go draw parallel lines like this, draw parallel lines like this, and then color in the middle. This, 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 and this. That would be your parallelogram. Something like that. And then we have what we like to call a rhombus. What's the definition of a rhombus? Does anybody know? Elijah says.
Parallelogram with equal sides.
Oh, equal sides. I don't think there's any way, yeah, I believe it is a parallelogram with all the equal sides. I don't know if there's any way to draw it, okay? But it looks like this. This side would be equal to this side, would be equal to that side, would be equal to that side. It looks like a squished square, actually. And then we have another quadrilateral that's called a rectangle. The exact definition of a rectangle is, Emily?
Stretched out
it's not gonna mathematically get you there, but it's a parallelogram with 4 right angles. So it would have to look like this. All 4 corners have to be right angles. And then last but not least is our ever popular, ever exciting square. What makes a square? It's kind of a hybrid of a bunch of these. It is a parallelogram with all equal sides and 4 right angles. So it has to have 4 equal sides and it has to have 4 right angles. And the important thing to remember here, boys and girls and children of all ages, is that technically some of these shapes, for example, if you look at a square, and I told you to list all of the shapes that you could describe it with, yes, it's a square, but all squares have to also be rectangles, because the only definition for something to be a rectangle is it has 4 right angles. All squares would also have to be a rhombus, because what's the definition of a rhombus? 4 equal sides. All squares are also parallelograms. So you have to look at those, and by exact definitions, a square could be any of those. We call it a square because we always use the most specific one so people know what we're talking about. Okay? A rectangle is a quadrilateral, but it is also a, besides being a rectangle, it's also a parallelogram. Does it fit any of the other categories? Probably not. It's a little like this. Are all squares rhombuses? Absolutely. Are all rhombuses square? No. So you have to know the exact definitions so when you look at them. Let's see if the book asks us something. True or false? Some rectangles are squares. True or false? Some rectangles are squares. Isabel?
True.
That is true. Because the only definition of a rectangle is that it has 4 right angles, which is every square. Every square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares. True or false? All squares are rectangles. Can you draw a square that doesn't have 4 right angles? No, then all squares would have to be rectangles. And that is why you need to know the exact definition.